Okay, I think we can probably get started now. Just a few quick housekeeping tips. If we're presently all on mute, if for whatever reason you're not on mute, please mute yourself. We'll take questions a little bit towards the end of this webinar, but if anything comes to mind while we're going through the presentation, please go to the chat and add those questions there. And then when we get to that portion of the webinar, we'll go through and we'll pick out a whole bunch of them. If there's any that we don't get to, we'll send those up in an email as a follow-up to this webinar. All right. Well, imagine that you're a butler on the hunt for your next job. You've been a career butler, right? So you know what the role entails, you're really good at your job, and you're looking for a family and a work environment that you'll thrive in. You come across two very similar job descriptions: greeting guests, keeping the house in order, assisting the family, all that butler stuff. But you look at those videos and you instantly know that being an eclectic man of few words, the stoic Addams family seems like a much better fit for you than the lively Banks family. Makes sense, right? So thanks for joining our webinar. Today we're going to cover how video can help you stand out to active job seekers and a few best practices with Elena here, who is my co-presenter. She can tell you a little bit about her background.
Hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. So when it comes to video, my team and I, we live, eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. So I am the founder and CEO of a company called Skill Scout. And this is exactly what we do, working with companies like yourselves to bring, be it your jobs, your culture, your leaders, your employees, to life using the power of video and storytelling. So built this business on the shoulders of small to mid-sized manufacturers about 5 years ago, and now have worked with companies large and small, from Nike, American Airlines, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Accenture, and beyond.
Awesome. And I'm Isabel Kent. I'm the VP of Growth here at JobAdX. We're a programmatic ad exchange, so you can think of us like the Google AdSense for jobs. So we actually learn from job seeker behavior, so that way we can deliver your jobs to targeted talent across our network of 150 job sites. We're presently the only ad exchange in the job space that supports video job ads, so that's a really big differentiator for us, and we'll talk about that a little further on. JobAdX was actually born from the best in consumer ad tech technology, and then we applied that to recruiting. So as you'll see, I'm a big fan of looking into other industries for inspiration and for problem solving. So in today's webinar, that's going to come up a lot. In fact, my background in PR Newswire is really going to lend itself to this conversation. A lot of the tips that I'm going to share today are multimedia marketing best practices that I've preached to Fortune 1000s, nonprofits, SMBs, and startups in my previous life before coming back to the talent acquisition space. So stop me if you've heard this one before. Recruiters need to think more like marketers. And I can already feel a few of you guys eye rolling, but stay with me here. Recruiters don't really need to change their roles, but they need to benefit from applying the techniques that marketers, advertisers, and communicators have been using for years. And right here, we have the data to back that up. But as you run through some of these statistics, I just need you to think back to your own childhood, because since we were little kids, we've all preferred picture books and movies over flat text. Why? Because when we're faced with new information, our brain absorbs images 60,000 times faster than it absorbs flat text. And we actually retain 10% more of that message. So it's no wonder that video is taking over. And you can take a look at social media. YouTube is the second ranking search engine and the second most visited website on the internet overall after Google, which is pretty poignant. So anything from cat videos, lifestyle influencers, product reviews, and skill sharing, we're looking to video to satisfy our need for new information and that authentic connection. And this is not a new concept. In fact, back in 2011, McKinsey had published a study that was called "We're All Marketers Now." And it talked a lot about how all of us really have to get in the habit of selling whatever it is that we're working on. And they're not wrong. Quite simply, we're all consumers, and our behavior as consumers in our personal lives is going to translate to our behavior as professionals as well. And when you think about your job as a recruiter and your expectations of job seekers, we are looking for people to come in with compelling skill sets and extracurriculars and sell us on the fact that they're the best hire out of all of the competition. So why would we expect that they would expect anything different from us? So let's take a look at the most recent jobs report that came out earlier this month from the Department of Labor. These are the statistics that came out for August. In August, in the United States, there were 7 million open jobs, which were record-breaking numbers at the time, and there were only 6 million job seekers. Now, that's already a pretty visible talent gap, but now take into consideration that not every job seeker is a one-to-one fit for the open roles. They might not be located in the same market, or they simply might not be qualified for the roles that are available. And now this talent gap gets even larger. But even at the height of the recession, millions of jobs went unfilled. In tech alone, 400,000 roles go unfilled every year. So if you have open roles right now, you need to be selling your company and your opportunities if you want to win over top talent, because quite frankly, they also have other options. So let's have a flashback to our own days as job seekers, shall we? I ran a search for account director roles in Philadelphia on Indeed, since a lot of us have used that platform at one point or another, and I received 1,292 results and decided to pick 3 very similar job descriptions for senior account director roles in digital marketing agencies that I'm familiar with that I found on the first 2 pages. Now, I've kept these roles anonymous, but I actually know these agencies. They were previously clients of mine in my past life, and I can say that they're fantastic companies with great company culture, really wonderful people working for them, good benefits, and they work on some really cool projects. But the problem is that that didn't always translate in these job descriptions. So take a look at these job descriptions with me. And these are actually pretty good job descriptions, all things considered, and I've seen some pretty horrible ones. These are solid, right? So this one in particular is showing you salary data. It gets into the roles and responsibilities. And this one's only about 1/4 of the job description. But what you'll see is on the left-hand side, there's an orange marker for about how far down I got and the average time a job seeker spends on a job description before deciding to move on or to apply. And that's about 40 to 55 seconds. Let's go to the last job description. So this is another really good one, talks about your requirements, qualifications, responsibilities, and further down, it actually talks about the company and its culture. So really good, fantastic job descriptions. They're very informative. They let you know as a job seeker what exactly you'll be doing. But now take a second and think about how you felt reading these with me. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And let's talk about how you felt, right? So did you feel anything? Did any of these jobs stick out? Were you compelled to apply? Would you share these or refer a colleague to one of these job descriptions? Or were these all more or less the same job? I didn't really feel much of any of that either. And I know these companies. I know they have amazing stories to tell. And even as digital marketing agencies, that still didn't quite translate in a flat text job description. So think about the job descriptions that you have posted right now. Would you rather apply to a job description that reads like a novel, and while it might be very informative, it doesn't really give you a sense of your environment? Or would you rather apply to a job that you can see yourself in, that makes you feel supported and valuable and pretty powerful, like my girl, Queen D, on the right-hand side here? Because if I'm sitting at a desk and I'm feeling understimulated and I've committed to making a change in my career, I know which story is going to be more captivating for me. We get it, right? Video is a powerful and prevalent storytelling tool that all of us are using. And if we're not using it today, we absolutely will be, because it's only going to continue to gain traction in recruiting. So now let's pass it over to Elena so she can share a little bit more information on what makes an effective and compelling video.
All right. So let's get this video party started. And you know, Isabel has been throwing a bunch of different statistics at you, 40 seconds looking at a job description. Well, I want to give you another one, 8 seconds, because actually that's how much time we have to attract someone's attention online. So yes, your candidates, our kids, all of them, we have the attention span of a goldfish. So this idea that we really need to grab our audience very quickly and in a compelling way is really important here. And the reality is, and this is what can be really powerful, is that only 1% of job posts have visuals. 13% of companies are using employee testimonials of any kind. So literally, even after today, if you are just capturing a few photos with captions and placing that on your job post, you are literally ahead of the game of over 99% of your companies out there. And so what does this look like? So I would just want to share a quick little video here. I know it's going to lag, so for those of you who would like to view this, by all means, I can share this link with you.
the tower rig with the ropes, and I said, that looks like something I could do.
Run your computers, run your cell phones, watch that video off of your phone. Without us, there's no communication. You don't have cell phone service if we don't build it.
I don't think it's safe for any guy to say he's not scared. There's always moments when we're lifting something heavy or something. If you got enough sense, you're going to be a little scared. But knowing the people you're working with, knowing everything's going to go the safest it can, then it's just another day.
Watch what you're doing. Watch everything around you. Inspect everything before you climb on it. Well, this full body harness that goes around your waist, and you've got 2 lanyards on your back and hooks. One of those has to be on the tower at all times. If you forget to do something, you're always got your friend there watching out for you. And we do the same to each other, so make sure that you're good. At SAC, they give a lot of good training. They teach you how to rescue. They teach you how to use all your safety equipment. After they get out of training, they should be able to climb.
Me recomendaron esta empresa, me dijeron que era una empresa muy buena. Disfruto de mis compañeros, disfruto del trabajo, me gusta experimentar cosas nuevas y creo que esta ha sido un gran reto.
We ride in the same truck, eat at the same restaurants, climb the same tower, so it's like a family.
When we get to the job site, we usually get out of the truck, talk about the paperwork, things like that. So everybody gets out the truck and knows exactly what we're doing. I'd say if you're going to start in the tower industry, this would definitely be a company to go to. So there's always that next tier you can go to.
I can grow here by learning other things and giving us the opportunities to move up.
This is the 4th company I've been to, and I can already see I'll probably retire with this company. Come lead the change.
Come lead the change.
Come lead the change.
Ven a liderar el cambio
to a connected world.
All right, so that was just a sampling there. And this is kind of at the point, where I would ask, putting yourself in the candidate's shoes, what did you notice? What are some things that you wouldn't have been able to get off of a job description? And, typically a lot of the comments I hear are things like, wow, I am afraid of heights. And that was actually really a huge issue here. Or thinking about the weather. No matter how much recruiters at SAC Wireless would try to kind of share that this really is what the tower climber position will be like, will feel like, it wasn't until you had a tower climber recruit, going up, that climb to realize this may or may not be for me. So SAC Wireless was really struggling here. And there was many things that they did, a social campaign, other things to really kind of just boost the story of the tower climber. And this video went viral, and it kind of continues to spread, shared with all of their employees, and it has done an incredible job of actually recruiting the right candidates to this position. So they actually went from a 33 million recruitment spend down to a 3 million recruitment spend as a result of this video and several other of the initiatives that we're doing. And in part, it was because they were being very upfront and honest, but also celebratory of the work. And so imagine when we're thinking about your roles, what are some of those roles that are really hard to understand just from a job description? Or think as how might you differentiate yourselves from other folks that have similar roles to you? And even asking the question, and I'll share this later, of just why do people quit, right? And so these are a lot of the questions that video in particular can help address. And there are many stories of talent acquisition. So, we're going to talk specifically about jobs, and there's a reason for that, and I'll go into that, but this could be company culture, skills overview, employee highlights. One that we've seen that's very popular is just bringing to life what your hiring process is like. What can they expect in your hiring process, and really kind of taking them through what that would be like so that they can feel comfortable. Because it isn't just about the role, it's what is that experience going to be like when they actually now come into your application system. So the sky's the limit with recruitment, and even imagine in the world of HR how communications can just be that much stronger, that much more meaningful when you have a medium such as video to be able to do that. The reason why we want to focus on jobs is, and Isabel's really going to get into this, is really it's, candidates at a certain point have already decided, all right, this could be, the company. Now I just want to understand, what is it like to be a shoe designer at Nike versus being a shoe designer at Adidas? So it's when they're getting to the job post that they're really trying to kind of understand what is going to be the key differentiator here. And so this is what we've seen to have companies have the biggest kind of return on investment, is kind of investing in these very specific roles that they might be struggling with. But I want to put it out there, and for those, by all means, I want people to kind of use the chat box, or at least kind of think about, what might be some of the big hesitations with video. And I'm curious, Isabel, even for yourself, when you've thought about video before, what's kind of been your big fears?
Totally. So the first one that comes to mind is I'm just maxed out on time, right? I have a million and one things to think of, and when I'm writing a job description, I could probably sit down and write one in 20 minutes, but do I have the time and the resources to really sit down and create a video? And as a remote worker, I know something for me is, how do I organize that team and get that content? But I know now that there are better ways to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm sure many of you are thinking, just like Isabel. So, if any of your answers aren't here, or insert your other deep fear, we've heard them all. And so, we just want to get that out of the way. Another just like really quick thing, we created a quick quiz on Skill Scout. Is your company ready for video? Because actually, maybe, culturally, or leadership wise, or just like thinking about compliance, you may not be ready for video. So if you and your team want to go through this exercise, just wanted to share this here. But we're going to take some baby steps today, right? We understand that not all of this can be, accomplished immediately. So we just want to share some of these key themes and some ways that you can get started even as early as tomorrow. One thing I did want to share is for those of you that are interested, this is actually a worksheet that we actually walk all of our clients through, whether they're a DIY video or full scale, to kind of help them really think about their job. So if this planning sheet is interesting to you, by all means, feel free to reach out to me via email, subject I'm in at elena@skillscout.me. If this is something that you would like, that you can take your team through. So these are the key questions again. So what are the ingredients for a great job video? So we've produced well over 1,600 at this point, and so these 5 really ring true. One being specific, keeping it real, aka lean into the suck, keeping it short, showing, not telling, and sharing your why. So let's just dive into this. So what do we mean by being specific? So as I'd mentioned before, the difference between a jobs and a cultural overview is how, how much of a deep dive we can really get here about a particular role. So when we're thinking about a job video, we want to choose one role. That's called a realistic job preview. And we want to talk to 2 people at least. One is an employee in that role, so someone who can actually talk about what's the kind of the day in the life of that role. The second would be a hiring manager, so someone who's actually interviewing for this role, would be expected to potentially promote, so that they can actually talk a little bit high level about what that growth trajectory can be like and some of the things that they expect. The second is keeping it real. This is actually one of my favorite ones. So at Skill Scout, we have a pretty kind of specific approach. It's kind of the ethnographic mindset. It comes from anthropology, and the idea is that part of this exercise is that we're here to kind of discover what these roles are like. And so the approach that I would encourage all of you to take is coming into this with a little bit of kind of the discovery approach in mind. Expect surprises. Expect that when you're out filming or planning for this, that there will be things about this role that you didn't expect that are really, really important for a candidate to know. So a question that we always ask, and so I would recommend this for you all, is when you're asking that employee, think back to your first day on the job. What is it that you know now that you wish you knew then? And that is so key here. Again, to get to, capturing some of the things that candidates just have constant questions about. And so when we mean about keeping it real, we want to capture the productivity. We don't want to stop it or hide it. We want to show employees in action. There are no scripts. At least that's the approach that we really like to take, because again, we want to encourage employees to share it in their own words, what this role is like, because most often how employees are sharing it is going to be how candidates understand it and can speak about it too. The other thing that is really important is to empower employees as being the experts of their experience. So not only is this, people have camera jitters, we really need to make sure that this is a celebratory moment for them. And so the more that we can frame this around telling them, hey, we really want to celebrate you. We want to attract candidates who are just like you. You're the expert here. We're not fishing for any answers. It's really important when it comes to setting the tone for the interview and making sure that this is authentic as possible. And the big one around keeping it real is showing stuff that makes people quit. And I'm sure some of you are cringing right now just thinking about that. And I get it, right? There's probably, maybe some things culturally or morale-wise that may not make sense. And in that case, you may not be ready for video, right? But I think when we can lean into what are some of the key challenges and actually talk about them authentically and truthfully, candidates really appreciate that, because one of the positive outcomes that can come out of a video is allowing candidates to self-screen in or self-screen out. So it's not just about attracting candidates to apply for your role. Sometimes it's repelling and saying, you know what, based on this video, this may not be for you. And that's okay. So that's a really important one to think about. So, one that immediately comes to mind for me is the American Airlines fleet service, right? Airlines don't shut down. So rain, sleet, shine, or snow, you are out there. And so when we were working with American Airlines, it was huge that folks saw that, hey, it's raining and people are still out there. So think about what is your kind of fleet service moment here, if you will. Oh. Now I have someone at the door. Sorry about that all. The other one is keeping it short. So this is really easy, right? We see about candidate attention span. So we want to keep it around 90 seconds or a minute and 30, and focusing on the top 2 to 3 tasks of that role and spending 30 seconds on each task. So again, Isabel was sharing that long laundry list of tasks and responsibilities. There's no way that we can share all of that. So, again, thinking about what might those top 3 be can be really important, and that's what we want to focus on. So showing, don't telling. This is a really easy one when it comes to video, because this is why we do it. We want to show the environment. We want to show the employees that they'd be working with. So while there would be some interviews and some people responding to questions, we want a variety of different shots and roles. So when you saw the SAC wireless, it wasn't just them, standing there talking about it. They were climbing up the tower and they were putting together their harnesses, etc. So think about what that would be for you. This one, probably for me, and when I think about biggest impact, is sharing your why. Candidates want to feel and see that they are part of a much broader, a much larger picture, that what they're doing is contributing to a bigger whole here. So, in the SAC wireless, one thing that really stands out in that video is he says, you try to watch a video on your phone, you try to get on your cell phone, like if we, don't do what we do, you don't have cell phone service. And so think about what that's like for you. And here's some key questions to help kind of get that fodder there for you. So things like, how does this role fit into the larger company mission? What would happen if this role didn't exist? What would happen? This is a big one, especially for people where it's hard to reflect. What would happen if people in this role didn't show up tomorrow? So imagine at the airport, if the baggage handlers and fleet service didn't show up. Well, you can't get out on time. And in fact, that airport will shut down. And then how does this role make the company, clients, other stakeholders more awesome, right? Inevitably, it's about in service of other people, whether you're in a retail environment or a service environment. And so think about these key questions, because that is one of the biggest things that we want to get out of these videos. The other thing I want to touch upon here is silent is the new black. So I'm sure many of you on social media, when you're watching content, not only are you watching it on your phone, you're probably viewing it without sound, because maybe you're viewing something at a time when you shouldn't, or multiple people are watching other things, and so viewing without sound is really important. And so that's why, as you saw, having captions is key here. And there's a couple of ways to think about how you might highlight this. It could be through text callouts like this. So if everyone's seen kind of cooking shows, so imagine the same thing. So we did something similar when we were working with a securities company, and they wanted to kind of highlight all of the different parts of the uniform and things. And so this could be an interesting way to call that out. And then of course you have captions. And the reason why this is important absolutely has to do with diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, right? We want to make sure that candidates that are of hard of hearing, those in the blindness community, which I'll share how we kind of worked through that, have access to be able to understand and have many ways to be able to kind of interpret this video. So this is going to be really key here. And so here's an example of that I just wanted to share around narrative audio. So we recently had some fun with the National Industries for the Blind, and they use narrative audio on their video. And so here's just a quick example of what that might look like.
Early morning, man approaches cab of semi, performs visual inspection of engine compartment, smiles and waves at camera upon departing. Male number 2 shown operating semi, visually inspects trailer connection and the exterior of the trailer with the aid of a flashlight. Under overcast skies, female approaches semi-truck, visually inspects trailer connection followed by tires with the use of a mallet. Shots of male 3 operating vehicle. We then see him lowering the landing gear of the semi-trailer in preparation for decoupling. Inspects tires with mallet, disconnects hoses from trailer. Male 3 now separates cab from trailer. Female approaches end of trailer with dolly in hand. She proceeds to open swing doors and extends a ramp. Adjusting its position, she prepares the ramp for use. We now see her walking up ramp with dolly in tow. She stacks boxes of product on the dolly and proceeds to move boxes to and from the trailer. Now done with the ramp, she removes it from its current position and slides it back beneath the trailer. Swinging both doors closed, she securely latches them shut. We then see 2 males interacting over delivery paperwork and breaking into laughter. Male number 3 and female stand proudly in front of semi. Semi drives away as screen fades to black.
So I personally can't get enough of narrative audio. And in fact, if all of you go to Netflix, any of the Netflix produced shows will have narrative audio. And so that's how the blindness community consumes content. So it's super fascinating. And as you can see, be it with captions, narrative audio is just one example, is one way to increase the accessibility of your videos, especially if you're looking to attract that community to your roles. So given the time here, I just wanted to briefly talk through, there are a couple of different ways that you can do video, starting with you yourselves, right? And the cameras that you have in your pocket. So for those of you that are immediately going to Blair Witch Project, I can't do this. I can tell you, I can promise you that yes, you can. There are, many now just savvy recruiters, HR leaders. If you can take videos of your dog, cats, and kids, you can take video of your workplace. And certainly there's some structure and some guidance. But let's just walk through what would have been, as we're talking, with clients who we're supporting around their DIY video needs. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages? So actually not a disadvantage, think about just considerations, right? So one of the reasons why, you know, some companies might choose a more DIY route is it is budget friendly and it's more scalable and affordable in that way. So if you're trying to tell several video stories and trying to do it in succession, right? Or you know, every month, every week, DIY video, right? And kind of taking it into your own hands with your cameras could be a key way. Another reason why some folks might kind of go with a more DIY route, if you will, is to capture kind of more of this in the moment stuff. So think about not just your roles, but events, cultural events, your upcoming Christmas party or awards. These might be things that just could be so much harder to coordinate, you know, just an outside production crew to come each and every time versus kind of you coming with it. The other one that really is key here is that because this is employee generated, candidates see this as being most authentic. So in a recent study, they said 55% of consumers, and that includes job seekers, found that, you know, that kind of raw, you know, employee generated, consumer generated content comes off as more authentic. And so this is something that's very true here as well. So that's something to consider. The reasons why sometimes this could be, you know, challenging certainly is thinking about your team capacity and capability. So Isabel, you said it, right? You're like, I don't have a lot of time here. You know, maybe, you know, videos isn't something that you do all of the time necessarily, even with your dog, cats, and kids. So there is a little bit of confidence boost here. When we think about marketing, right, and how we become best friends with marketing, we have to think about, well, how are we ensuring that the brand treatment is consistent across all of our videos? And of course, you know, when we think about editing or how do we craft this and the time it takes, that could be something to take into consideration. I will say around when it comes to editing, there are multiple options. We're seeing companies who can do this in one take. So imagine it's not like this has to be, you know, 90 seconds. It could be a quick 30 seconds of someone just doing a quick tour around the office in one take, and you don't need any editing and you can immediately upload. For those of you that are kind of interested in diving into this further, I've kind of just left the website here just to kind of give you guys a taste into what this might be and if this is an approach that you would want to consider. The next one is you know, a we film, and when I say this, you know, either it's kind of a larger crew who's coming in, maybe outside of your organization, and you know, yes, kind of the more kind of full scale, and some of you might be used to this more traditional approach to video, and it's still very, very valid. And so some of the key considerations of why companies might select this approach is time. Is having that additional support. So a lot of the times when you are going through a huge recruitment blitz and are preparing for one, you need content quick, fast, like just immediately. And so sometimes having that outside support who is producing these videos for you is a key factor. A lot of folks actually are using a mixture of kind of this DIY and kind of professionally produced, and they're using this professionally produced to have a longer shelf life, if you will. So imagine maybe this is a role that may not evolve, you know, for another 2 years, or you know, this is a video that maybe we won't kind of revisit, you know, until, you know, another 3 years down the road. This is where you might want to consider full scale, and of course consistency, right? So when it comes to making sure that the brand treatment and visual treatment is top notch, this kind of helps to kind of guarantee that, which is why I'm sure marketing very quickly kind of goes to this much of the time, so that all of that can be as consistent and cleaned up as possible. But you know, of course, there are also kind of considerations. One is budget, right? So this is something that does cost more. And glossy can be seen as inauthentic. So if we look at the opposite of employee generated content being something that people see as being truthful, glossy video can be seen as being something that isn't as trustworthy. You know, candidates asking, oh, what are they hiding? There's this beautiful glossy video, you know, so what's kind of the Wizard of Oz moment here? For those of you that are interested more in this approach and just kind of keeping into considerations, I've left the link here as well for you all to kind of take a look at as you think about what might be the best approach for your organization. And I'm going to now pass it off to Isabel, kind of wrapping up the video and capture and kind of just themes approach.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great. So now we all have a lot of new ideas of the sort of content that we could be doing. Because I know a lot of us might have gravitated, I know I certainly did, well, we got to do a workplace video and maybe talk about our product, but having an interview process video or even like a selfie video as a recruiter is definitely helpful, especially if you think about recruiters that work for agencies. Sometimes you have that rec that you can't disclose the logo, and this is a really good opportunity to really sell someone on the benefits or the process for interviewing with a recruiting agency if they haven't done that before, without having to disclose who that company is that you're trying to fill that rec for. So lots of really fantastic ideas. But the most important thing is that you can have the best videos in the world, but if no one can see them, it's kind of fruitless, right? So let's talk about distribution, and we'll talk about how jobs can be a newer part of that process. So here's some of your more traditional channels, right? Let's say you have some great employment branding videos, whether they're that office walkthrough or whether they're talking about your process. Probably one of the first places that you're going to go ahead and post that video is on social, right? So social is great because it gives us the ability to reach new audiences by hashtagging a new topic or industry or even a specific audience, and reach some of those more passive folks that you might not have been targeting directly. Or conversely, social can be one of the first places that a candidate will go to when they decide to either apply to your company or they already have and they're trying to get a sense of your culture, so they can use that as talking points in the interview. So definitely be using social, whether that's on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, whatever your preferred channel is for your audience. It's a must-have in today's day and age. The second channel that you're probably already posting video to is your career site, right? So whether that's your About Me site or your ATS landing page where job seekers are redirected to apply, you probably have pictures of either your office or your team members already. That's where you're talking about your benefits, all that cool stuff that you have, that beer in your fridge or the nap room or whatever it is that we have that we're really trying to sell people on so they can come work for us. So career sites are also fantastic places to host this content because that's where people that are already proactively doing research on your company because they've chosen to apply or they're on the cusp of making that decision are going to go because they do want to see who they'll be working with and what that environment looks like. So that's fantastic too. Now here's another one that we're probably maybe using, maybe not, review sites. So review sites are growing immensely in popularity, and they're increasingly more influential on the job seeker and their decision to apply for your company. So if you're anything like me, I know the food options in my city in and out, but if I'm trying a new restaurant, you better believe I'm looking at Yelp and wherever else to make sure that other people also think it's a pretty good restaurant before giving it a shot. And that's a pretty low impact decision, right? So now think of people that are job seeking and they're making a career move. They're going to go and try to see how you are as a company, so that way they're proud to work for you and what your reputation is in the space overall, but also how have you treated your employees in the past? What should they be aware of? And a lot of these sites like Glassdoor at the Muse also host a lot of the content that's going to tell them about who you're working with and what the workplace is going to be like. So this is an opportunity to really validate your brand and engage a job seeker while they're researching your company. So those are great channels that we should all be utilizing and posting our video to. That's the nice thing about distribution, is that you shouldn't really be only using one channel. You should be using as many channels as possible. And the great thing is a lot of them are not very cost prohibitive at all. So let's talk about something a little bit different that you're probably not using a lot of today. Interactive job ads, right? So some of you might have heard of these before. A lot of you probably haven't, but this is how your first impression is going to get a lot more impressive. So what an interactive job ad is, more or less, is a job description with some sort of multimedia content or even reviews or something like that that can engage that job seeker and create more of a dialogue than rather just having them read something. So that multimedia content could be sound bites, it could be video, it could be office photos or photos of your hiring manager or the recruiter on your team, starting with logos going all the way into that full-fledged video content. you really just want to create more information that job seekers can engage with in that job description rather than just the bulleted, templated list of what they should be expecting from their job. So let's take a look at one of our interactive job ads. So like I mentioned, JobAdX is the only exchange to offer this feature. So what happens is when a job seeker goes onto one of our partner sites and they run a search, they'll get all these jobs that appear that we've targeted. We won't get into that today, but those sponsored jobs will then have two different buttons, so either view ad or view video. So that's already your first differentiator. And then a modal pops up with a video that'll start playing, and that could be your company culture video or anything else. And it'll play right away. So that way that person is now captivated, they're engaged, they're learning a lot more about your company. And if it seems like a good fit, if they've taken that second to self-select and see themselves in that environment, they'll continue on to the job description. And then to learn more, they can then be redirected to your application page where they can then apply. So the difference with this is that you're actually retaining that lead, right? That source of hire. Because when a job seeker has to suddenly make the conscious decision to do the research elsewhere before coming back to your job description, they're tabbing over to a different site, right? They might be losing that job description to start with. They might not be coming back there. So you're losing that pass through to your ATS. So you don't necessarily know where that job seeker is coming from. So you can't use that data effectively to then follow them back, right? So this is actually retaining your source of hire. This is engaging them. This is creating an emotional connection. And ultimately, it's going to be a lot more effective for you than a flat text job description because you're really standing out to proactive, active job seekers that you're capturing while they're searching, not the passive ones that are just kind of maybe finding your content, and not the ones that are already in your pipeline that have consciously made the decision to apply, but that sweet spot of the folks that are looking for something but don't know that you're the one, right? And so finally, you have these effective job ads, which I know a lot of you guys, when I hear recruiters talk to me about why they don't do job distribution, the first thing that they say is, well, they're ineffective. We're not getting the sort of people that we want. Our candidates are not really that quality, or they're not really engaged. We're getting a lot of ghosting. Job ads are ineffective. Well, the reason why they're ineffective is because they're not memorable. They're not stimulating. They're not creating that authentic emotional connection with your brand, and they're not standing out against the other 1,292 account director roles, right? So now you have it with video, you have an effective job description. And why? Because now your brand is more visible. They've been able to consume that content faster in a matter of seconds without having to commit to read every single bullet point or skim through it and miss a lot of the meat. They're now able to remember that brand more effectively and commit most of that to memory over visual or over flat text content. They're spending a lot more time on these job descriptions. So here's some data from OnGig. With a flat text job description, job seekers are actually only spending about 55 seconds reading through at the most. But if you add video without having it play automatically or without the job seeker choosing to play it, they're going to spend 3 times more just on that job description, really reading into it, because your brand seems more validated to them. Now, if that video plays automatically, or if that job seeker chooses to watch the video, that's going to be over a 500 or nearly a 500% increase of the time that they're spending getting to know your brand and your company, and also creating that connection. So that way in their mind, they already have a little bit more skin in the game when they're applying to your job, or they're making the conscious decision to self-select and not be that poor fit that's going to be in your pipeline, taking up your time as a recruiter, right? And what we also know is that this actually reduces your time and cost to hire because the quality of the candidates that you're seeing now are actually a little bit better. In fact, it's going to reduce your cost to hire by 56%. That's nothing to sneeze at. Especially if this is a selfie video and you're doing this for low production cost. I mean, that's fantastic, right? We can all use a little bit more budget. And then now we're just going to recap a few tips and tricks here that we learned today between Elena and myself. So the number one rule of creating effective video is that KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, silly. Your video doesn't have to be, yep, keeping it PC today, guys. But it doesn't have to be complex to be effective, right? We all have a video production studio in our pockets while we're walking around. We're posting on Instagram, and none of that is professional content, at least for most of us it isn't, right? So if we're able to do that, there's no reason why we can't take a quick selfie video and talk about what it is that we're we have to say to these job seekers and why they should choose us. So keep it simple, create that emotional connection, give them a why. I mean, it's great if you do have the nap room and the beer in your fridge, but we all know that what job seekers really want is that opportunity to be part of something. And if you can convey that message, they're going to see you more than just a job, but potentially a career move, and something that they can really be committed in and really put their heart and soul into. And ultimately, that's what you want for your employees. The second thing is shake it up, right? So we're all multifaceted companies. We have people of different levels of experience that are coming from all different walks of life that join our companies, and they're bringing in different perspectives and ideas. And we need that if we want to keep evolving and innovating as companies. So a one size fits all video that you just spent 20 grand on to put out on the internet one time is not going to cut it. So having a nice mix of these videos, whether you're doing all high production videos or doing some of those selfie videos, make sure that you have a couple different messages that are talking to different audiences. So that way you can really engage with maybe some of your more senior level talent that you're trying to get into your company, and maybe some junior level talent that are going to have different values, and they want to see those values reflected in you as a company. You have a lot of different stories to share, so share all of them. You don't necessarily have to pick one. And finally, get proactive, right? So there are many traditional channels out there that you're probably already using for employment brand videos, but when you're able to tie those to a job, to an open role, that's now a more intent-based marketing tool, right? Job seekers know what they're getting themselves into. They're not just learning about you as a company that may be hiring down the road, but you have something that's available for them today, and they are the right fit for that job, and this is why. So get proactive, start including video in your job descriptions, whether you're using a company like ours that that targets talent networks and secondary niche job boards that are more industry specific, or whether you're using one of the industry behemoths like Indeed or LinkedIn or Glassdoor. They all have video capability today. So if you have any video content, start testing that, start putting it into those job descriptions anywhere you possibly can, because it's just an extra distribution channel. And if you're a company that happens to be B2C or in a consumer focused industry, all of that is actually going to be even more effective and have a few bonuses for you there, because ultimately it's going to not only educate that job seeker as a potential candidate, but it's going to educate them on your consumer brand, and maybe that person will then become an advocate for you later on down the road for the consumer space as well. And then you're maximizing your recruiting dollars and your marketing dollars, and that's a win-win. Cool. So we have about 10 minutes left for questions. So if you want to start putting some into chat for us, we can go ahead and answer those, and anything we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up in our email. Let's open up the lines.
Isabel, I actually have a question for you.
Sure.
When you kind of opened up this functionality with JobAdX, has there been any just kind of interesting case studies from video based on kind of the new function that you've opened?
So we're actually working on a lot of our own case studies. This is still a pretty new product for us. So we launched it back in August, but there have been a lot of case studies on video job descriptions from single channel distribution. So again, like those monsters, the Indeeds, the LinkedIns that aren't reaching a large network, but rather just one site with a large audience.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you go onto OnGig, they have a whole bunch of those studies. Career Builder did some a while back, and they're pretty powerful. So what we're seeing is that you actually get about 50% more applications, which is, I mean, that's stellar. And they're not just spammy applications. So you're not just getting volume they have to sift through now, but you're getting higher quality applications. So you're ultimately saving yourself time and then seeing much greater substantial results right off the bat. And then we're also seeing that a lot more people take the time to really be thoughtful in their applications. So they're going to go through that the end. They're going to commit more. They're going to show up to your interviews. Like, this doesn't just end in the application process. They're going to show up to your interview more committed and more prepared to speak about how they fit to your brand and into those roles. So if you've ever conducted an interview and someone shows up and you're 5 minutes in and there's really just crickets in the room, you get a lot less of that when you start educating people on your process and your company, because now they know what's expected of them as well.
Yeah, and that's something that actually we've seen kind of in our own data too. So it's exciting when we have interactive job ads. That's where a lot of the key engagement can be. It's not going to be because it's on a footer and maybe you can take a look at this video. It's really pushing, and sometimes companies, forcing folks to say, hey, before you get on our phone screen with us, you are going to watch this short video and we're going to talk about it. So we've seen, very similar, have a lot of companies get some great ROI just by embedding it further and further into the application process.
Sure, yeah. And you can really add video all throughout. And in fact, I would encourage you to do so. This isn't just something that you do at one point in your process. It should be at every single step, even as follow-ups. I know one thing that you do in your emails to me is that you do include these videos following on what we talk about. And I found that to be extremely helpful because as a busy person, I can press play on that while I'm doing something else and be like, oh, right, I need to get to Elena about this. And so when you're trying to engage talent and now we're seeing ghosting become a bigger and bigger issue, and you've already made that hire and they're just not showing up for work, that's a lack of engagement. And so you could be sending them video that's just got like, hey, really hoping that you had a good weekend. We're really excited for you to start in 2 weeks. Just wanted to share a link about things that you can read about us up until that point. Looking forward, just keeping you in mind. Let us know if you have questions. And something like that is equally as effective.
Fantastic. Julie, do we have any questions from attendees today?
You're on mute.
Yep, I unmute myself. So I have a few questions, but due to the time limited, I'm gonna pick the most recent one. So a person is a walk-in attendant, and he or she asks about an example of what a video job ad looks like on a job board, because she said that she knows that Indeed doesn't have the ability to have video as part of their job posting platform.
Yeah. I mean, so how might they leverage that video then? Is that the question? So if Indeed doesn't allow, what might be a solution?
Yeah, I think there are two parts of the question. The first one is what kind of job board she can post it on, because Indeed doesn't have that platform. And the second question is how does it look like on a job board for a job seeker? Like, what will they see on a job board for a video job ad?
Sure. So I can actually send an example as our follow-up, so that way you can actually see from the job seeker perspective a live and active video if you weren't able to zoom in during the presentation. So what it looks like is typically one of these job ads. I know Monster has been investing a ton into their video content presently, but typically what happens is that it'll be embedded at the top or in the middle of a job description. So if you're a job seeker on one of our sites, and you can follow along at trendingjobs.com, which is a partner of ours, and run a search, since it's not on a per search level, if a video job ad isn't available, you might not see it, but maybe it'll come up in search right now. What you'll see is that instead of like a view ad button, you'll actually see a view video button. So it'll differentiate that there's a video already available for you. And when you click into that, a modal will pop up with that video playing, and then the job description directly underneath, and then the job title at the top. So very similar, but imagine if you were to embed a YouTube video directly on top of that. So think about how, like, if you were writing a job description in your email and you want to embed video and kind of move it throughout before you send it, it'd be similar sort of templating. So like I said, there's a lot of different job sites. I was under the impression that Indeed did offer video, but perhaps maybe they don't. But I know for a fact that Monster does and Career Builder does. If you're using something like the Muse, that's a much more robust platform, they're all video content. But if you use someone like ourselves, you can actually reach sites that traditionally don't allow for video content. And the reason why is that we actually own those ad units, like real estate, on the partner sites that we work with. And so we're able to deliver video into that template through that modal, even if they typically haven't had that capability in the past, or that typically don't allow it because it is a more in-depth process. Now, as an employer or recruiter, if you're sending those jobs to us, it's super easy on your end. We already template that for you, so that way it appears nicely and looks like all the other job descriptions for like a seamless user experience. All you need to do is add that domain link or wherever the video is hosted, whether it's YouTube or your career site, in your XML feed to us in a separate column, and we'll apply that to all your videos. Or if you have like separate ones for each job description, you can do that as well.
Oh, thanks for your answer. Yeah, Sarah Pip just said that it is amazing. I would like that example of the video Isabel was talking about sent to my email. So, yep, I'm gonna send it to your email. And we have another question from Barry Clan. Are video job ads useful if they leave behind a text ad? He means that the job seeker doesn't know it's a video ad, but then boom, they see it. How does it work?
So typically with our exchange, personally, we will signify that there is video included. And what we find is that there's also over a 36% increase in click rate when someone knows that there's video included in a job description. So at the very beginning, we want to give them that option and educate them on the fact that something more compelling is going to live here. So
another response to that too is there might be some roles where publicly you may not be allowed to share a video offhand unless you immediately come into the application process. And so, yeah, that's where what we've seen is at that point, if it's part of the interview or at the application process, this becomes a way for candidates to self-screen in or self-screen out as they're getting closer and closer to the interview process. Because, you know, there are some things that are proprietary where, you know, companies may not be able to share a video upfront as a result.
yeah.
Perfect. I think we ran out of time on this. So for the rest of the questions, I'm gonna forward it to Elena and Isabel, and they would write a personalized answer to each of you. And we also have an event recording sending to all of you after this. So yeah, thank you all for attending, and thank you, Elena and Isabel.
Yeah, thank you all. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me an email to kind of brainstorm what your video vision could be.
Yeah, and if you have any follow-up questions or if you just want to talk through this, we're always here to help. So even if you're not using us as a distribution channel, please let us know. And we can give you a couple of pointers of where to start, because I know that that's not always the easiest question to answer if you've never done this before. But yeah, please connect with us on